Alright, so the reason why I'm making this video is because I wanted to do the front differential fix for my Sportsman 850, and there just really isn't any videos out there showing what needs to happen. I mean, the part itself came with some simplistic directions, and as of right now, I'm just kind of getting into it. In case you're wondering what I'm talking about, this is the new part that is going to go on to the front diff. And the reasoning why I need this is because apparently the plate that's on here right now has a tendency to break off. And the reasoning behind that is because it's probably fine for the stock setup if you're just planning on running the stock wheels and tires, whatever, you're probably okay. But I have these big honking monsters that I want to put on here, and from my understanding, the two things that kind of need to happen to put on big wheels and tires, especially super aggressive tires like these Outlaw 2s, you need to do the clutch. And the second most important thing to do is this front diff plate, because for whatever reason, this plate likes to snap off, break, whatever, and if that thing breaks off, you're going to be in to the machine for a lot more money than the $140 or whatever it is that they want for this part. Alright, so now that that's out of the way, I had found a couple of videos talking about these prop shafts and how to replace the knuckles and things like that on there, but I really hadn't found a video that specifically showed how to get the pin out that goes through this hole. This prop shaft goes on here, and you can also see the hole there, and there's a pin in there, and the pin, you can't just put a wrench on it and turn it out or whatever. It's just being held in there by pressure. That is the pin. So when it's in there pretty good. I mean, dirt and dust, whatever, corrosion over time holds it in place pretty well. So anyways, I had done a little bit of research online, and somebody had suggested using an air chisel, which it just so happened that I had one. And before I got into using the air chisel, I was trying to just drill it out. Drilling it out seemed like it was really hard. Whatever that pin is made out of is really dense metal or whatever. But my bits weren't going through it, and so I resorted to trying to use the air chisel, which it turned out to work fantastically. I mean, this is the air chisel. One of these costs about, I don't know, $25-35 at Home Depot. And you can buy this 5-pack of different types of chisel ends. I don't know if you can really see the different kind of ends on them, but I've never even really used any other end besides this one, because I use that for chiseling out concrete and stuff like that for my day job. And but it just so happened that the kit had this chisel end on it that was like perfect for trying to get into, the diameter of the pin is like roughly 1/4 of an inch, and at the very tip of this thing it was like 1/8 of an inch or maybe even slightly smaller. Now the first time I tried to use this, the tip of this thing was actually so small that it like went in to the inside of the pin and just kind of got stuck in there. So what I had to do was I pulled the tip out, which wasn't exactly easy because it was stuck in there pretty good. And I basically cut the tip of this thing off. I mean, I really didn't do the greatest job cutting it off because I can't find my grinder for whatever reason. It's probably buried in here underneath a pile of shit. But I basically used a pair of bolt cutters, and didn't really even like cut the tip of this thing off like the cleanest. There's still like some jaggedness going on there or whatever, but once I did that, I put it on the end of this pin and pulled the trigger for about, I don't know, 3 seconds, and the pin was already out. Well, it didn't come all the way out, it came like halfway out. And then I took a bolt like this that has like a, like an Allen head spot for, to fit on the end of there like that. So I basically stuck this bolt in the hole, put this air chisel on it, and pulled the trigger for like another 3 seconds, and it was out. And that was the end of it. Really, once that pin came out, the whole shaft slides back on the rear. Well, I guess this would be the main, but it slides right back out. And then this is pretty much good to go at this point. I mean, to get here, you have to take off the, the footwell. I had taken off all the plastic and stuff for other reasons because I'm, doing all kinds of stuff to this machine. And of course, you got to take the wheel off. And there's like a piece of plastic that goes right here. So I just took all that stuff off so that this was exposed as I could possibly get it. And, really my next step is to disconnect these 4 bolts here, and the directions are telling me that I got to unbolt the bottom of this thing and possibly try to lift it up a little bit, which, I really hope that I don't have to do that, but I guess we'll see. I'm going to take these couple of bolts off and then come back and we'll talk about what happens after that. So, thanks for watching. Alright, so the next step was, to remove these 4 bolts. I'd taken those bolts off, and, I was not aware that I was going to have fluid leaking all over the place. Maybe that's just my own stupidity for not draining the thing ahead of time. I mean, I was not aware that all my fluid would come rolling out of there, but whatever. Thank God. Yeah, I would rather have this happen, but thank God I didn't have to unbolt this diff and try to jack it up. I mean, I was like looking at it, and it seemed like it was pretty damn close. Like, I didn't know if I had to like get over that shaft or whatever to get the thing out, but as you can see, it just popped right off. I mean, again, this is a 2016. I assume that the 2016, the 15, and even possibly the 17 and 18s should all be similar to this, as long as the space between your 2 front lower A-arms where they connect to the frame and the front diff all look like this. You should be pretty much good to go. I mean, even, this thing even had room to where I could have like tilted it backwards and then like went upwards with it. I mean, there was really nothing preventing it from just coming right out. So, all right, well, it looks like I'm gonna have to take this thing apart and then transfer these parts over to the new part, and then basically put it all back together. So, all right, well, I'll give you an update whenever I figure out what's going on here next. Alright, so to remove this piece from inside of here, all I really did was I took a little bit of the diff fluid and rubbed it around this part to give this a little bit of lubrication, and really I just held this, I picked it up and held it with one hand and just took a hammer and just gave it a tap or two, and it just came right out of there. So what I was doing here was I was looking at, you know, these two parts, and you know, that what's nice is this already comes with the bearing and the outer seal already in here. So really the only difference between this part and this part, which it even tells you in the directions, is that I'm assuming that this rubber ring on the that goes around this outer part of this circle needs to come out and be put on the new part, and then put this back on, and then everything should hopefully just bolt right back up. I mean, I can't see any reason why there really shouldn't be any rhyme or reason how this is. I mean, this just is just a gear, and it just slips in between those teeth there. I don't see any special markings or anything which way is up. I mean, usually parts like this thing has to be perfectly balanced, otherwise it would cause all kinds of vibrations and weirdness. So alright, well, so the next move, transfer this rubber ring in here to this one, place this back in here, which again probably wouldn't hurt to lube this up a little bit. I mean, there's a little bit of rust on the outside of this thing. Might want to clean that up with something. You know, anytime you work on stuff, you should be cleaning basically every part you touch as you're working with it and things like that. I had already sprayed this down with a parts cleaner to help loosen up anything, you know, whenever I was messing around with this pin. So, alrighty, well, I'll check back in whenever I have something else going on here. Alright, so I'm back, and here we are. The new plate still hasn't been installed. So, as I'd mentioned earlier, the directions had said that they wanted you to remove 4 bolts underneath of the diff, 1, 2, 3, 4, and loosen these 2 bolts here. There's this bolt here, and there's one on the other side. That's actually where the steering stem connects to the steering rods. And it sits on the front diff as like a pivot point. There's really no other reason why it's there besides being a pivot point and just a final place to secure it on the bottom end of the steering. So they wanted you to remove those bolts, and supposedly the front of this was supposed to be able to tilt up. I was not able to get it to tilt up. I mean, I tried everything that I could think of. I even there was even a bolt, I don't know if you can see it right through there, that black bolt that is where the power steering unit that I have bolts into the lower steering stem that connects to the pivot point for the whole steering assembly. And I could not get it to move. And the other thing I was thinking about with this thing moving up, if I would somehow be able to get the distance between these 2 points to shrink up, there's actually a groove inside of the post that connects into this bolt here, and if that bolt doesn't go inside of that groove, that bolt won't go in. I mean, I know this because this is a Super ATV power steering kit that I had installed, and let me tell you, it was a real bastard to put in this steering kit. Anyways, long story short, I tried everything that I could to follow the directions the way that they were described. Maybe a better mechanic than me would be able to get it to work exactly as they had it planned out. So the reason, you know, like I said, they wanted you to move it up, and I had assumed that was to be able to, like, get this piece out. I thought that it was like being like trapped in there by the pivot points for your lower front A-arms. Well, as you can see, it's really close. However, I don't know if you can't really see the distance between these 2 points. There's a gap between the end of this pivot point and the front of your differential, and the problem is, since this new one is so thick compared to the old one, I mean, you can see it's almost double or even maybe triple in size, and it won't physically fit between this little spot. Now, other machines might be different. There might be a problem with it fitting on the far side as well. I figured out that I have enough room there to make it fit. So, long story short, I found a grinder and actually had to grind out this little teeny, maybe a 1/16 of an inch out of the corner of this thing, which I don't think is enough to affect the structural integrity of this. It just has this little teeny bit ground out of it. And I tell you what, I wish I would have just did this from the gate, because, literally, I probably spent an extra hour messing around with this thing, maybe even longer. And as you can see right now, it fits on there perfectly. And you see how it has that little bit of wiggle room right and left? That's basically what it needs, because it would have fit on there, but it was like all cocked to where the bolt holes didn't line up. And before I started this, I had already stuck the bolts in there to make sure that they all lined up and everything. But I mean, as you can see, that little bit of wiggle room there, that at least lets me know that it's not sitting up against something that it could possibly be rubbed against too. So I know that it's free and clear, and it's ready to go back on. It kind of sucks because now I got to go around and re-tighten up a bunch of nonsense that I had to loosen up to try to follow these directions. But either way, I'm making this video as to be informative to other people. So if you go through this same process, I could definitely save somebody a little bit of time by taking a grinding wheel and grinding that out it took me maybe 3 minutes to hit this with not even a cutting wheel, like a legit grinding wheel that's meant to just take the smallest amount off of something. And, I can't imagine that being a problem. In either way, no matter what happens, this thing is going to be substantially stronger than the stock piece, with that 1/16 of an inch taken out of it or not. I mean, I could be wrong. I think the stock piece might be aluminum. And you see how they even know that there's an issue, because they have all these little cross supports on the thing to try to strengthen it up. Well, clearly that's not enough. This thing is a beast compared to this little pot metal junk, whatever the hell you want to call it. This is, I don't know if this might still be aluminum as well. I'm not really sure. I guess I could probably hit it with a magnet. They just said billet. I don't know if that means aluminum. Maybe comment, tell me what it's made out of. But anyways, so I'm going to reinstall this thing. I'm going to put a little bit of grease inside of these bearings and stick it back in. And I mean, realistically, the only other bit of advice that I can give on this whole project is, once you reinstall all this stuff, the drive shaft where that pin was that I had talked about, I don't know if I mentioned this earlier or not, but instead of getting a pin to put back in there, get an 1 3/4 or 2 inch long, I believe it was a 5/16 bolt that will fit right through there, and just put a locking nut on the end of it. And that way, if you ever have to change these universal joints out in the future, you'll be able to just undo the bolt, slide the thing back, and I'm not exactly sure how it comes off exactly, but I know it has to come back forward. But regardless, for taking this thing apart in the future without having to bust out an impact or a air chisel. So, well, that's pretty much it. I mean, when I get this thing put back together, I guess I could turn it on and show you what it looks like half-assed put back together. I'm not going to put the plastics back on or anything just because, you know, like I had said before, I have a ton of other things that I want to do to this thing, and I might make some future videos just because I'm planning on doing like a full high lifter conversion. You know, these are basically the stock high lifter wheel, or not wheels, the tires, and I have double-sided bead locks that I spent way too much money on, and I'm gonna, you know, do the high lifter rad relocate and all kinds of good stuff. I have like, you know, another $1,000 plus worth of parts heading to me as I speak. So, all right, well, I'll post back here in a few minutes. All right, so a couple last things. I just wanted to show you what it looked like all wrapped up here. As you can see, everything's all buttoned up. Everything's connected back the way that it was. After I got past the issue with that corner needing grind out, everything else went pretty smoothly. You know, I went back around and had to tighten up a bunch of nonsense that, you know, I loosened up earlier. So, you know, a couple of things. I would say, first off, make sure you drain your front diff fluid before you do this. I don't have the directions in front of me, but I don't really remember it saying anything about that. But again, if I would have been able to watch a video of somebody else doing this, I would have drained the front diff fluid first. It was kind of like shocking whenever I pulled that piece off and it started spewing oil everywhere. As you can see, I have all kinds of rags, and I have a nice little stain on my garage floor. Whatever, it ain't hurting nothing. It's just annoying when you're trying to do something and you pull it apart and all of a sudden shit's flowing. So, you know, that being said, make sure that you have front diff fluid to put back in this thing if you do this. I fortunately do, because I had planned on redoing all the fluids and stuff and doing an oil change anyways. You know, I'm doing all my spring or pre-spring riding stuff right now so that I can get that all out of the way. Last but not least, you know, last year at the end of the year, I had filled up all my whatever these are, the oil fittings or the grease fittings for the suspension and things like that. While you have everything ripped apart, it's probably not a terrible idea to do that stuff, because I know a lot of these fittings are extremely hard to get at, and the most important one I would say to hit while you are back here is that there's a grease fitting right here on this rear part of the linkage, and, you know, to get at it, you have to take all these plastics apart and stuff like that. So, I mean, realistically, that's the one that you really can't get to without tearing a lot of stuff apart. So you might as well get at it while you're in here. And actually, it looks like the oil filter is right there. Well, I guess there's a plate underneath that you can access the oil filter from, but it might be a little easier having this stuff apart and maybe doing an oil change while you're in here too. So, again, that's it. That's the front diff fix. That is from, what is it called? Hdatvgear. I can't find the information. Hdatvgear.com. And it was $140. I will say the customer service is excellent. It looks like it's a pretty high quality part. I mean, really, they're the only people that I even know of that even make this part. Polaris may have since addressed the issue and updated these in some of the later models, but I mean, all I know is that if you're planning on putting big old heavy tires on and lower gearing in your clutch and hitting big mud holes and stuff like that, there are things that are going to break. One, you're probably going to break some axles, and two, if you have that small silly looking plate on there, it's probably going to rip off, and it's probably going to do other damage to your front diff. And that's I knew that was a common problem, so I figured $140 was well worth the peace of mind. And some people would say, like, I don't know, the more stuff you strengthen up down the line, then other things are going to break. But I mean, really, this should not be one of the things that break. I mean, I would rather snap an axle over have this shatter and have to replace the whole front diff any day. I mean, this machine, it's not barely even 2 years old, and I have no warranty left on it. I don't think they would cover the warranty with half the crap I'm getting ready to do to this thing anyways. And so really, this front diff lets loose, and I'm going to have to pay for it out of my own pocket. And from looking at Polaris part sheets and things like that and how much they want for everything, if you wanted to buy a whole brand new front diff from Polaris, it would probably cost you every bit of $1,000. So not to mention, they're a major pain in the ass to get out of here. I mean, I couldn't even get mine loose to do what the hell they wanted me to do, to tilt it up or whatever. But you know what? I'm glad that I'd rather shave that little bit out of that corner than tilt it up and put it in a position that it wasn't really intended to be from, the manufacturer anyways. So, so there it is. I hope you enjoy the video. I'm not like a professional YouTuber or anything, so I don't really care if you hit like or subscribe. It might take me 6 months to post the next video. Again, I know that there wasn't a video out there like this about this specific part and this process in general. And like I said before, I replaced that pin with a nut and a bolt, and this nut is on here is a lock nut, and I actually have like a locking spring washer behind it, and I put blue Loctite on the thing to make triply sure that this thing isn't going to fly off of here. The strength of the bolt really isn't all that important, just as long as it fits in the hole, because it's not really there to keep this knuckle from spinning on the splines. It's just there to keep the whole thing from sliding offwards. That's it. I mean, there's these grooves in here. A lot of stuff would have to go wrong. If this bolt would snap in here, you're going to be replacing all of this. So that, I mean, not that the bolt would be the problem. That would be the least of your problem, because, if that bolt shears off of there for some reason, you're going to have way other problems that don't even have anything to do with that bolt. So, alright. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed the video. I'm sorry I'm a little bit long-winded, but I like to be thorough whenever I'm doing this kind of stuff. Again, I'm kind of, I videotaped this as I was actually doing it, so it wasn't like a very smooth process for me. I had a lot of little humps and bumps that I had to get over to get to this point, but, I'm glad that I'm here. But again, I hope this video helps you out. Enjoy, and good luck.